Rowena Dooley asking Sol citizens to report for duty. This is Rowena Dooley asking Sol citizens to report for duty.
And good afternoon, greetings, and welcome back to Soul Voices. I am Griffin Gaming RPG, and we are back for another week of great conversation about Star Citizen, with our subjects coming from Spectrum and Reddit and other fine places. Hope you guys have had a good week. We are in the month of February. February is, for us, it's Black History Month, and we are not going to be covering any Black History in Star Citizen. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that it is Black History Month. I hope you guys are doing well. Appreciate you guys being here. Yes, I see Wakanda Forever. Wakanda. For those of you who don't know, you can check out Wakanda Forever if you're on Disney Plus. Good movie. Black Panther series is a great series. Like all the Marvel stuff, right? Pretty good. Today we are going to hit some topics that are both from Spectrum. We've got one from Reddit this week that I want to get some opinions on. It's actually coming from CIG, the one we're going to talk about from there. But in light of update 3.18 being out on PTU, as you guys know, for a couple weeks, it's been out for subscribers, tier 1 call, what do you call it? Level 1, I can't think what you call it, but you know what I mean. And concierge and level 1. And I think it was on Thursday of this week. It went out Thursday night. Yeah, it went out to tier 2, level 2. And that particular patch came out. And boy, oh boy, was it a trip. Buggy. Landing zones. Folks were just stuck at landing zones. It came out that night. Elevators for some people weren't working. I know in Orison they weren't working. Almost every location. The trams weren't working. So folks basically had to stay home. You log into the game and all you could do was be at your landing zone. So we want to talk a little bit about a bug that has been around for a while. And it was an interesting post that I came across on Spectrum. And I want to see what you guys are going to have to say about this. By the way, if you want to come in and talk with me and share your thoughts about the topics that we have, there will be a link that will pop up in the chat on occasion. From time to time. In fact, I'm going to put it in there right now. And if you want to come in and give me your thoughts about the subjects that we're talking about, there's the link right there. You can click on it. It'll put you in the queue and you can come in and share your thoughts with me and the community, because this show is about the community. It's about you guys. And so we want to hear what you guys have to say about it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the very first topic that we have from Spectrum. I'm going to pull this up for you guys. As always, I want to give you the link. Some of these posts, usually I get like really short posts And when I get a short post, I can kind of put it all on the screen. But then sometimes these posts are monster posts. And this one is one of those posts. It's not that big, but it's big enough. So I'm going to read it to you. There's the link. There's the title for it. And the title of this was A Letter to Mr. Chris Roberts About Elevators. And this was done by Enigma4. So, as you guys know, I'm still fighting off this weird cold thing. So forgive me with my voice. I'm going to read this to you, and then you guys can give me your thoughts. Dear Mr. Roberts, we all dream of what Star Citizen can become and what you should have and what you have said it would. We are somewhat there, and we share your vision for the project. While we do have our small differences in topics such as PvE sliders, ballistic gun ammo counts, and other things that will likely have an in-game resolution later, or are simply not introduced yet, there is one thing I think that we all as a community universally agree on. The elevators are the bane of the game. Just as the Durin's bane in The Lord of the Rings was the price Durin's folk paid for digging too deep into the minds of Maroola, excuse me, so I fear the elevators have become the bane of Star Citizen for digging too deep into realism. While I respectfully understand your stance on not cutting corners, I say that instead of turning a corner, one can sometimes choose to go straight instead. I reckon I fear the elevators in Star Citizen more than I would the Van Duel. Henceforth, I would like to propose that we stop reinventing the wheel, at least this one time, and just make elevators work like every other game. Get in the cabin, play some sound, teleport the player to an identical cabin, play some stop sound, open the doors. A simple and elegant solution. For the context, the latest patch that was pushed to PTU today seems to really made the elevators angry at the numerous attempts to fix them over the years. So they went on strike and collectively stopped working. They also told the shuttles and trams to do so as well. While I understand that this is what the PTU is for, and fixes are likely coming in due time, this has been a problem since day one of the introduction of elevators into the game on both live and PTU servers. While fixes sometimes fix the problem for a while, it mysteriously appears in the same or in the next patch on live. Perhaps it's time to make a change that works. Thank you for your time and concern. Okay, so this is the thing I really want to focus on in here. There's a lot said, but this whole statement about, is there a faster and easier solution to deal with elevators? And I really want to see what you guys think about that. So let me start it out right now. We've got Pops is already in the queue. Pops, I'm going to bring you in here. How you doing, Pops?
I'm doing fine.
Good. Okay. What do you think about Mr. Enigma's suggestion here about dealing with these elevators, these evil elevators?
Yeah, I absolutely understand where he's coming from, and I appreciate the way he started out saying, and the evil elevators, and you can be standing there waiting on an elevator to come, and it all of a sudden it can come past you and knock you out into whatever realm you want to call it. I don't, so I absolutely understand where he's coming from with that. It's frustrating. Sometimes they do work, sometimes they don't work. We have all have this fear that's been embedded in us, getting in an elevator, being near an elevator, and all of that. Yeah, and I absolutely agree with him. It's like a monster.
Okay.
But I understand the development to a point. And the point that I understand it to is that what they, number one, is that Chris Roberts wants everything to be, I guess you would say the right terminology, you would say physicalized, not teleportation.
Okay.
He wants the elevators are actually physical elevators that you run and jump. He wants the immersion of the game to be real.
Okay.
And the technical part behind why the elevators act up sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I don't know if that has to do with persistence or just elevator positioning, if they're not in the right pipeline, if they're moving and shifting from time to time, that could be it. it could be a whole lot of other things. As far as saying stop and leave them, oh wow, that I can understand it from a frustration point of view. I could say yes.
Okay.
But from a development point of view, I would say no. So yeah, I got two answers, and two answers always.
Okay, you see both sides of the coin basically on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy that for $1. All right,
Okay.
Pops. Thank you very much,
right.
brother.
Cool.
All right, let's bring in Fist to Face. Fist to Face, what have you got? Any thoughts on this? Are you there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I'm here.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna look at it like this from this approach. So elevator, yes, we are like Pops was saying, and we all have had the issue with the elevators of knocking us into space and stuff like that. But to eliminate the elevators and go to a teleportation type of gameplay like that eliminates gameplay. Okay, follow me here. So when I think about elevator gameplay, the elevators take you to a destination that you want to go to, right? It takes you to a specific hangar. Now that hangar right now is not locked off to just you. But now when you teleport somebody to something, right? Now that basically brings you into an instance that's just, basically that's privy to just you. And the reason why I kind of come up with a gameplay scenario and saying this is because one time we got on our ship, and we know folks like to hang out in hangars to sneak onto your ship. I've seen gameplay where people will hang out in hangars or follow a player to a hangar if they have a bounty to get them and get onto their ship. So when I think about just, let me say, okay, well, let's just teleport somebody to something, now it becomes an instance. Now that basically kind of takes away gameplay, a part of gameplay that could be there.
So you see it forming an aspect of gameplay. Okay.
Right.
Okay. My as I mentioned earlier, this was one of the subjects that I mentioned that I got into a big conversation with some folks about. And the question was, yes, elevators are in other games, but every game that I've known that has elevators don't do it in a multiplayer format, as far as I've played. Now, I'm not saying there isn't a game out there like that. I'm just saying, I know in Elite Dangerous, when they put their elevator in, there's only one person that can get in that elevator and go where they're going.
Right, exactly.
In other games too that I've played, a Portal, whatever, it's always just me. And, there's the elevator sound, just like he describes here, when the doors open, right? Usually it's a load screen in some form. So my problem was that in the design of Star Citizen, is it even possible to do teleporting? Now, there were some people who told me yes. They said, well, yeah, you could teleport. My question becomes, how do you teleport and the other people that are around you in the MMO experience not impacted by your decision or vice versa? For example, Fist, you and I get into an elevator.
Right.
And I'm sure you've had this happen before. You wake up in your hab, right? You're on level 7 and you're in the elevator. And as you're going down to the lobby, all of a sudden it stops and somebody gets in because they were on level 4. Right. So I've had it actually happen where it happened 3 times. Somebody came in on 2 different floors below me before I got to the lobby. Okay.
Correct.
In a teleport situation, my question becomes, how do you keep the immersion? Because if I'm going down in the elevator and I push the button, and for me, it's supposed to be, that cabin I'm in is static, right? And I'm asking to be jumped down to the lobby. But then there are people on the floors below me. Should their button pushing impact me? Should I be forced to stop at their floor? So I could say, let's say I got on at 7, you're at 5. You push the button. Am I going to go past you and go straight to the lobby and come out? Or am I going to stop at 5 and see you?
You should stop at 5.
Okay. So that means there has to be an elevator at each floor for me to teleport into. Correct?
Right.
I'm just saying, right? In order for that to work, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right,
okay.
Right.
So I'm saying, to me, I'm looking at and maybe somebody else wants to come in and have this conversation too with us on this. I'm trying to figure out the way Star Citizen works is this whole thing of boxes or cabins, inside of other things, right? That move because they're physicalized, right?
Correct.
If you remove that dynamic, especially in some like on trains, we can't do that, right? Because we have windows and we can see outside. I'm sure there may be at some point even elevators that work like that. Like, for example, the one at Levski, when you're going down in that elevator, you actually see, the elevator shaft passing you. There's that being able to look out the back window aspect of it.
Right.
I mean, in other words, is there method to the madness why he has physicalized these beyond just the cool factor? You know what I mean?
Well, to me, if I'm understanding your question, right? Like you said, the whole immersion factor of what you do in day-to-day life and how something works in a day-to-day life, right? That whole thing, if you just say, okay, well, now something just instantly happened, like you have that easy button, that just takes you out of the game, because all of that, to me, and I look at it from the standpoint, all of that goes into the whole preparation of what you're trying to do. So when I think about, okay, well, where am I going to land? Like you asked the other day, like you asked last week, right? You said, well, where are you going to make your home? I said ArcCorp, because you know why? I'm thinking, what's the quickest way for me to get to where I need to go to? I'm thinking, okay, ArcCorp doesn't have that many floors, right? So I get in the elevator. It's only about maybe 4 floors in that hab. I think that hab area.
Oh no, ArcCorp's got more. It's higher than that. It's higher than that.
Okay,
this probably doesn't feel like it, but it's higher.
Right, because the highest floor I've ever been on, if I can remember, was about 4. So I get in there, I get out, drop down to the lobby, and I get to wherever I need, grab all of my guns, my stuff, and then I get on the tram and I'm gone. Doesn't mean that I don't want to be able to, go to some place like later on, if I'm in a city with a high rise, that I want to be able to, feel that immersion of being able to go into a building and go up to a floor, and take an elevator, because that's the whole part of the gameplay experience of being able to do that.
So, you're saying the immersion aspect of it, because you mentioned about this, you feel like it'll be broken if they go into teleporting? Because,
okay, here's the thing. Like he says, he mentioned, okay, well, let's just take this one piece of the gameplay, the elevators, right? Let's take the gameplay of the elevators and let's just make the elevators become a teleportation thing. Well, let me explain something. Because one thing, once you start to degrade one thing,
you think it'll happen?
It starts a chain.
It could.
It's a chain. And I'm just saying, because it starts to happen, because once you start to kind of cut corners on something like that, like you said, it breaks something in there. And then now when you find something else in the game that may, oh man, this thing is so buggy. Oh my goodness, I wish they would just do it the easy mode. Then now that becomes the next subject of, well, let's make this easy. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I kind of see it from that point of view.
Let me run something past you. Reload from Test Squadron said it a certain way that I thought was very cool. He said that he sees elevators as being just like ships. That's how he views them. And he doesn't just look at it as just like an elevator, but that it's the container. You got people inside of it. It's being told to go do something, and it's moving through physicalized space. Now, some people were getting killed because, when the elevators were coming before, sometimes instead of the elevators moving through shafts, it would literally come through like the actual hallway you were standing in, right? And if you were standing in front of the elevator, it would kill you, right? Is this physicalized elevator thing something that I don't think we've seen in any other game? Is this kind of maybe the birth pains of a different type of gaming technology? And birth pains are something you go through, right? They're right. That's just what they are. That you don't birth it and it's all easy. Is this? And don't get me wrong, I understand it's frustration. Elevators have been, for some people. I'm gonna be honest with you. I seem to have less problems with elevators than a lot of other people. And what I mean by that is, when there are periods of time when people are complaining about elevators, and I have absolutely no problems with elevators. And then there are other times when I'm having problems with elevators at the same time everybody else is having them. One of the ones I know, for example, that I didn't suffer a lot with, that a lot of people did, and I don't know what the reasons were, was LOD related issues, where people would get in elevators and fall through them. I rarely ever had that happen to me. In fact, I can't remember a time where I got in an elevator and fell through it. Now, I do remember times when the elevator door would open up and I'd see space or I'd see the city, but I never had that issue. Now, is that because of internet speed, load time? I don't know what it is. My client, I mean, why do some people have that problem? Just like some people, every time they run, they fall and they die. I never had that problem. A lot of people had that problem. So I guess my question is this a technical issue, right? Or is it, like you said, I mean, yeah, okay, he says, well, let's just make it like everything else, because we just want to be able to get the elevators working. We want to get past the frustration. But is this whole thing that Chris Roberts designing frivolous in the long run, or will it mean something bigger when it's working and fixed?
Well, to me, I always looked at his vision as something being bigger, because you can take that same approach with the elevators on ships, right? So let's just say, okay, you got an elevator on I'm quite sure does the Javelin have an elevator?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know it's got staircases. I don't know if it does or not. There are ships that do have them, though. Yeah.
Here you go. Here's one I know that has an elevator. Excuse me, the Reclaimer. What happened to me when we were out? Right? Yeah. I was down in the hall and I was trying to get back to you guys when somebody was attacking us. Right. The elevator would not work. I could not get to a turret seat because that elevator just would not work. All I could do was go into the hall and just look around and just pray and hope that Griff gets us out of there safely. That's all I could do. You know, do I get mad that the elevator was not working? No, because I mean, I understood it was a bug of the game, you know. So do I sit back and say now, okay, well, listen, Chris Roberts, this elevator thing is a pain in the ass. You know what? Let's press a button to teleport me now to the seat to where I want to go. Okay. And I get it. It's a part. He's speaking from a frustration point of view. Yeah. And a lot of times, and that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of times, like, if we take it from a psychological point of view of things, right? When you speak from frustration or emotions, what happens, like you're trying to do a task, you start to cut corners on something.
You're just trying to get to the end as fast as possible.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. I'll buy that for $1. All right, Fist. I appreciate you, man. I got one more in here, ODZ. We're going to move on. I haven't seen Odie in a while. Odie, how are you, man?
Hey, what's up, Griff? Long time.
Haven't talked to you in a bit. How you been?
I've been all right. How about you?
Good. You got a solution for us, right? This elevator thing. You're gonna fix these elevators for us, right?
There are many ways to look at it, but just answering the question that you have up, I didn't hear the beginning of the statement, but this is Star Citizen, right? It's all about reinventing the wheel, or at least, you know, if not evolving it, you know, revolutionizing it in some way, right? So if he doesn't want that, then he's looking at the wrong game for that, because this game is all about that, right? It's about playing the game differently than you normally would. And it's about grounding it, you know, because if we had teleportations, then the game wouldn't be as immersive as Chris and the team would like it to be, because it's just a teleport. And then, you know, as I think it was Fist said, it's all about gameplay. There's certain gameplay loops that, you know, are tied to the elevators or transit, you know, whether it's an elevator or one of the, you know, the trams or the sky cars and all that stuff. Because you can literally, you know, they could tie it into things like bounty hunting, right? You know, like maybe since they sat on something, right? Maybe there's a camera in there that you could use to track, right? And not only that, what if we actually end up getting gameplay for like a engineer to fix these things when they break down? They could actually literally make that a mission. Right?
True.
Elevator breaks down. You know, you get a mission pop up. Go fix the elevator. Right.
So let me ask you. Can I ask you a question while you're there? Because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I do want to present this because you're hitting on something that's in my head, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. so much of what we see in Star Citizen, you mentioned about the fact that we're in development, right? And he's trying to innovate. He's trying to do things differently than what the industry has done in the past. So many things we have learned. And for any of us who've been here any amount of time, there's some things that come in at that tier 0 level, and then you start to realize there's a bigger picture than that tier 0 level, right? Do you think that this whole thing with elevators, to your point, you just mentioned how it could expand into some other areas. Do you think that what they're doing there, physicalizing movement inside of an interior or building a ship, could blow up into something else later that we just don't see?
Exactly. Remember they were just having this discussion on, I think it was last week, on some of the side benefits of just having persistence in the game, right? Mm-hmm. Now that you can, put a tracking device on something, and since it persists, you could literally track them until either they discover it or maybe it runs out of, power or whatever, right?
Right.
The same thing can be applied to things like elevators. The fact that it's physical means other things could affect it. It could be affected in transit, right? By loss of gravity.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you need to actually, I don't know whether people would like this type of gameplay, but you could get stuck in an elevator.
Power outage, yeah.
And have to get rescued.
Yeah, power outage, right? Yeah.
Anything like that could actually happen. But that wouldn't be possible if it was just a teleportation, right? And remember, they also want it so that we can, right now, maybe it seems a little claustrophobic and it seems more gamified right now because we're contained without being able to see outside unless you're in like a sky car or something. Right. I'm talking about regular elevators and space stations, right?
Right.
Now, remember they said they're going to make it so that we can see outside now.
Right.
When we're in transit, so that'll make the experience a lot more visceral, So I think it would ease people's, I guess, anxiety about it just being a loading screen device and more of like an experience,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, thanks, man. I appreciate you dropping in. It's always good to hear from you.
Hey, no problem, man.
All right, good. I think Odie might have fixed the elevator problem. Choosh, thank you so much for the 200 bits. Why didn't my alert go off though? That's not right. That's weird. Something's wrong there. Okay, that wasn't on either. Boy, the chat wasn't on. Oh my God. Yeah, Chooch, I want to acknowledge that. Thank you so much for that. I don't know why we didn't get our alert because it is on, but there we go. Okay, thank you guys. That was great. Maybe the elevators will get fixed finally. I don't know. We'll have to see. Let's move on to our next topic here. I had wrestled with this one a little bit. I understood the person's opinion on it, but I'm going to run this one past you guys and see what you all think about it. He does make some sense here with some of what he says. I'm just kind of like, okay, maybe he's thinking about this a little bit too much in the real world. But then again, Star Citizen is supposed to be about the real world. So I just put the link in the chat for you guys. This is by Maroola, is in Spectrum. And the question was, why would anybody build an outpost around a crashed ship? Now, there is obvious reasons for that, but then he does elaborate on what he means. Let me read it to you. It says, in my opinion, it displays a total lack of believability and imagination. Sure, maybe the crew would set up something temporary while they hope to get rescued, but why would a community grow up around something as tiny as a 600i or even a reclaimer? A vulture can scrap it in minutes, and the components will eventually be retrievable in minutes too. Once that job is done, why would anyone hang around and set up a home? Location and natural resources have always been the drivers for settlements, not burnt out wrecks with nothing left of value. Okay, so there we go. We're gonna go with that one. See what you guys have to say about that. We've already got some folks in the queue. I'm gonna bring in Fist first on this one. Fist to Face, you there?
I'm here.
Okay. Why would anybody build an outpost around a crash? He does give a reason for it, but he says, would they keep building? Would they stay there, I guess? What do you think?
I get it. I understand what he's saying, but I'm going to be a little sarcastic here. The reason and why is a game.
Okay.
Okay. Why would somebody, it's like, I kind of take the question in a direction of this, like I being in sound design. Okay. When you look at Jurassic Park, if anybody knows what a T-Rex would actually sound like, a T-Rex would actually sound like when it doesn't roar like you've seen in Jurassic Park. It would actually have like a low gurgle. Now, how does that portray in a movie if you just saw a T-Rex and he just low gurgled?
You wouldn't be impressed, right?
It wouldn't be impressive. It would be like, okay, you know what? Why did I pay $12.95 to go here to sit through here and pay all this money for this popcorn and stuff like that, right? So there's, you know, I mean, I get, we kind of went back from the other question. We were talking about realism and immersion. It's a game.
Yeah.
At the same time, too, we you know, want to have certain things when we come across where, you know, a derelict outpost of somebody setting up shop or something like that, a shanty town or something or whatever. And, you know, maybe somebody, like you said, somebody got, well, you know, folks got stranded there, and, you know, that happens. That builds lore and gameplay, you know, and can't, you know, get around, you know, around it. I mean, this kind of similar things like that, similar situations like that in the world out there today, not necessarily like a ship dropped, you know,
right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But folks making do with what they have.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good point.
You know?
Because, for example, he uses the example of, well, all they have to do is get a vulture. Well, what happens if they don't have a vulture?
Right, exactly.
Right.
So
I mean, that's the other side of the coin. And I get it.
You get to, so this is a space game. So like when we see like Star Trek, you know, or something like that, they go to a civilization that, you know, is not as advanced.
Right.
And like you said, that they're not, you know, don't have access to those things.
Right.
So what do?
Right.
Oh, okay. You know?
Okay.
Hey.
All right. I'm digging it. Thank you, Fist.
All right.
Good points. Good points. All right. Let's bring Pops in Space in. Pops, you there?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Yeah. You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I have a few. I you know, there was a couple of movies that came out where people have been stranded and they've had to survive. And I mean, I don't know if this person has ever seen movies like that. I believe it was one they went to Mars and they, you know, they had to survive on what they had.
I think he gives room for that, right? He says, I understand them doing it temporarily, but I think what he's saying is that in the long term, you know, why would anybody start to literally build this thing out to a point where it's not just like, I'm just there waiting on a rescue or because I have to live here, but wouldn't you find maybe a place where there's a river or places where there, you see what I'm saying? I think that's where now mind you, some of this stuff, we just got rivers in the game, right? So let's take that into consideration too. I mean, like we only had one before. I think that he's still just kind of saying, would people still stick around these places after they've been there for a while? You know,
I think what it is this particular person is I don't want to use the word lack of something because I don't like to be negative towards people, so don't misunderstand. But I think he needs to sometimes connect the dots in his own gameplay in his own mind, and I don't think Star Citizen needs to write lore around something so simple as that. But that's my opinion. And this kind of goes back to a pilgrimage, a shanty town thing. And sometimes what happens when people build from things like that and they've been there, it's home to them.
It becomes home.
They've invested the time, they've gone out, they find other parts. You know what movie, this is the movie Star Trek. The one with the Wrath of Khan. Now those people, they landed, that was all they had. And they survived. Now they did escape in Wrath of Khan, you know, they stole the ship, but they survived for all of those years there. And it became their home. And you know, I think that part of imagination, some of us need to reach on that on our own. I don't know if CIG wants to spend the time on little things like that, on the reasons why.
And, and that's a good point, Pops. And the other thing too is that, like Fitz said, it's a game, And some of them are just literally POIs. It's not necessarily the most rational thing, but they become a point of interest. You don't know whether or not when you go there are people who are living there or whether it's abandoned, right? Not every site is going to have residents. There will be some that will, there will be some that are abandoned, and we'll just have to wait and see how. Again, this is still early tier, right? We're just getting these outposts in, so we'll have to see what's going on, because CIG may abandon them eventually, right? But maybe this is the place to test AI, right? There's a lot of things at this level. Well, no, but my point is, our show tomorrow is called our main show tomorrow is called Now and Later. What's happening now may not be what's later. You see what I'm saying? Because so much of what we're doing now is about testing, is my point. So right now, that's what we got, right? We've got these outposts, and we know people want to have some type of encounter. If we just put outposts there that were completely abandoned, how many players would go, right? Yeah. But the fact that there's a possibility that someone's there, that there's AI, that there's animals there, that's what's going to draw people into gameplay, right?
You read my mind, Griff. You read my mind, because the next thing I was going to bring up was that there could be reasons why, after they've been there, it could be reasons why. It could be minerals. It could be, just like you just mentioned, animals. It could be become part of a fur trade. I know that's ancient who trades furs, but it could be a meat trade. Maybe the animals are nearby. Maybe it's kind of substance, some kind of exotic dish that they could make. It could be all kind of imaginative things that CIG could go in different directions for these derelicts.
Okay, all right, and we'll find out in time. You know, that's my point. You know, this is early tier stuff. I don't think we can write in stone what's going to happen at any of these locations yet, but we'll see. All right, Pops, thank you, man. All right, let me get OD back in, and we're going to move on to the next one. ODZ, you back?
Hey, Griff.
Yes, sir. What you got? What you got?
Okay, so first of all, I could tell that this person is very comfortable in Star Citizen, enough that they can buy spaceships without thinking about it. But you got to imagine, this is a universe where there'll be people of different means. Yeah. There'll be, space hobos, right? Who'll need a place to stay. Yeah. Yeah. And the first line in the quote that you have actually should be reversed on the person who wrote it, because what he's describing won't make the game believable, and it shows an actual amount of imagination he actually doesn't have any from what he says, because not everyone in Star Citizen has a ship, right?
True. Yeah.
Not everyone in Star Citizen would have a vulture, right? And he's always looking at it from salvage. There's another component, which is repair. What if the person who's living there wants to actually repair the ship? True. Right. So you'd have to stay there, maybe collect the resources and then fix it up. And then now that's literally your home for you to take with you everywhere. It's not always about just salvage and go. It could be, you want to fix it up and keep it.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked something that Pop said earlier too. Sometimes it's almost like, not to be funny, I don't want to say this in a negative way at all, but it's like when you mentioned about seeing someone who is homeless, right? And people will say, well, why do they live there? Why do they stay there? You know what I mean? There's all the places they can go. Why do they do that? There is a psychology about when people find a place where they feel safe and they feel as Pop said, they feel it's home. Right. It may not make sense to me. You know what I mean? I might be the guy that says, hey, I'll go stay in the shelter. You know what I mean? But for other people, that empty lot with those cardboard boxes or those aluminum panels, for them, that's home. And they would, even if you went there and told them, hey, we could take you someplace else you could be, they'll say, well, no, I just want to stay here. This is my home. There's some psychology.
They made it their own.
Exactly. There's some psychology behind why some people may or may not leave areas. I know there was an old story, an old comedian told a joke about people who lived out in barren areas where there's deserts and stuff. It's about, well, the reason why you're starving is because there's no water. Just move where the water is. That's easy to say from a position of privilege, right? As you mentioned, for a person who owns ships and can get around and say, hey, you can just do this. But when you don't have anything, it's not, there's a statement that says always about easy fixes are always easy from a distance. It's not until you're there that you realize sometimes things are much more difficult than they seem. So I don't want to make this too real world, but I also want to play into the fact that, to Fist's point earlier, it is a game. Secondly, we need, as players, need a reason to go there. If I knew that every abandoned ship or wreck was empty, other than going to look for components, right? But if I know that there's a possibility I might run into some people who are defending it because that's their home, that's a whole different level of gameplay for me, you know.
And not just that, we're also not considering criminality, right? It could be a hideout, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be a place where you go and you stash, whatever ill-gotten gains that you've acquired.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. I didn't think about it. Hideout, right? It actually is one of the missions on Microtech. That's actually like the reclaimer is actually a hideout for them. It wasn't a reclaimer. It was it a reclaimer? I don't know what it was. It was a big ship that we were in. I think it was a reclaimer. Yeah, and
I think it is a reclaimer for the Nine Sails.
Yeah, right. It's their hideout, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know. So yeah, there are a lot of other reasons that we could think about. Now I understand what the person is saying. Yeah, obviously, if you can find natural resources and be near them, that's fine. But until just recently, there was only one river, you know. So, I'm sorry, but you ain't gonna navigate the globe. You're gonna stay where that particular wreck is, and that's about it. So, okay, thank you, Odie. I appreciate you, man.
No problem.
All right, we got one more. Chew has dropped in with us. Let's bring him down. We'll move on to the next one. Chew, you there?
Yep, I'm here, Griff.
Hey, man, how are you?
I'm okay.
Good. What side are you in you're West Coast or East Coast?
I'm East Coast. I'm in Jersey.
You over there fighting that cold right now, brother?
I don't know about fighting it, staying away from it. I was out in it this morning.
Okay, I was looking at the weather last night. I was talking to Fist and them because they're in Jersey, and I was telling them that they were sitting up in New Hampshire, up at Mount Washington, whatever it is. The last night it was supposed to hit 100 degrees below wind chill factor.
Yeah, I did
minus
survival
100.
training up near there.
Oh,
it's
dude,
rough.
Brutal. I know that's brutal. Anyway, enough about the winter here. Let's talk about the weather in the game here with these outposts. What do you got to say?
Well, three things. All right, first of all, CIG tells us what that is. Outpost. Outpost is not a settlement, right? So when you think about it, the rest of the game isn't there for that. There's probably going to be inhabited areas, villages and stuff. And then since that's a prominent location where if someone wanted to harm the people in the village or the populated area, that would be a point where they would set up. So you set up a picket there, right? And if someone comes along, you're alerted that, hey, somebody's landed, they came out here, you fight them off, right?
Right.
You keep them from being able to build a base there. So that's what I got on those. And the big thing is it's testing. It's a game. It's in testing. They're just testing that asset right now. And and then later on in the game, of course, they'll add if there's a river or rocks or a market or something that's in close proximity to that, that'll explain people wanting to protect that. But I think now most of the time we see a bunch of Cutlass Black show up after you go there. So obviously it's a spot where they do deals or something and you interfered because somebody sent you there to take this box was meant for someone else. Now here comes the backup. So I stay away from them because, I'm not into the fighting thing right now, at least not like that. So at least they're there, but I think they're cool. Yeah, I think they're cool.
And I'm glad you said that too, because I was saying earlier about how, sometimes things come in at tier 0 level, tier 1 level, and we assume that that's the way the game's going to be. But I'm glad you raised the point about settlements, because that CIG has told us that that's what's coming up next, right? We're going to start having these places where AI or NPCs exist. We've seen it in the clips that they showed us for Pyro, where they've got full settlements with cantinas and all this other stuff that's there. So this is just first iteration of residences on the ground, for lack of a better term, right? And it's going to expand further. So I think that's a real good observation. Don't think that the buck does not stop here is basically what I'm saying. It doesn't stop here. There's more coming.
These will be mission points. Like if you do have to deal with a wreck, it'll be a mission point to recover something, or you might have a reclaimer mission to go and salvage that wreck, later on. And somebody might come and fight you over it, just like they're fighting over a mining claim. This is our claim, know, and so it's just testing is the way I look at it.
What I'm hoping happens too, and we're going to move on to the next one after this. I'm hoping that these locations, that they literally move around so that they do become more of temporaries, if that makes sense. In other words, a crash has happened. It may stay there for a little while, but then eventually once it's stripped, once they get physicalized components in them where we can take things away, literally that it disappears and then it pops up someplace else. You know what I mean? That way you don't get into this whole thing of always knowing that this is where this certain wreck is in this certain forest. You know what I mean? I would love to see them go away after a period of time and pop up elsewhere. I think that would be kind of cool,
Yeah, the ship munching, I think, will help take care of that, I hope.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, Chew. Thank you, man.
All right.
All right. Good stuff, good stuff. All righty, you guys are helping us chop right on through the show today. All right, this next one coming up. Ooh, is this a long one? Yes, this is a long one. And this is one, guys, you're going to have to read along with me. Some of it, I don't even think I'm going to have to read because y'all already know about this subject, but I'm going to put it in here anyway. Like to hear it? Here it go. All right. It's those of y'all who know where that came from. I'm still celebrating Black History Month, y'all, so I gotta throw that in. Okay, there's the link for you guys. This is by Raeven-One. What is the plan for resolving the massive ship backlog? Now I'm going to focus in on a certain part of this. It says, with several very large ships being concepts or very early in development and taking into consideration the vast amount of time required to make one of the larger ships, the backlog seems to be years, if not decades. New concepts are being made and sold, adding to the vast backlog. A couple of months ago, this led to some heated discussions. If CIG had given an answer to this query, I fear that I have missed it. Now, please, I'm not talking about which ships are prioritized. I understand ships that don't have their game loop won't be made before ships that do have their game loop. I'm purely talking about the quantity of work that can be realistically achieved and how that quantity seems only to be growing without any end in sight. Without an answer being given by CIG, we are prone to make wrong conclusions. For example, I'm under the impression that there is a limited amount of talent and a limited amount of people that can reasonably be hired for this work. There's no direct solution, and those who pledge for a ship will simply have to wait for years or decades before they see their ship in game. This is not being communicated, since that would cut into profit. And threads like these are purposefully ignored. Those passionate about the subject are likely to give up, which means less attention to the issue. That would be a very bleak conclusion, a very negative narrative. So kindly, if I have missed the answer to this question, do tell. If not, I would love to hear the answer. Okay, so the plan for backlogging of ships. Let's talk about that, because this came up a little while ago, a couple months ago. Big thing came up on one of the ISCs. Oh God, the guy's face is in front of mine's Crew, John Crew. John Crew was talking, and he was talking about, like, he gave example for the Polaris, how in man hours, the amount of time it takes for them is 2 years in order to pull off the thing. And people went 8. They're like, oh my God, 2 years to make a ship. So I know this is kind of springboarding from that, but I do want to talk about this idea of ship backlogging. Okay, I'm going to bring in Kai Zin. Kai hasn't been here yet, so let's bring in Kai first. Kai, you there?
Hello.
Hey,
How are
buddy.
you?
How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm noticing a theme with all of these questions today. All these questions seems to be like, hey man, I am a cab driver with absolutely no experience in game development. I'm going to tell one of the most successful game developers in the history of the industry
How to do it,
and his army of top game devs. I can do better. Do it my way, which I just find hilarious and entertaining, and I think you pick those on purpose for entertainment value. But to address this specific question, how are you going to deal with the backlog of ships? I would point out 2 things. Number 1, I think the backlog of ships is by design, because that's how they get funding for this game. So the idea is you don't want all the ships to be out and for them to have more ships, because then the money stops by trickle and drips and drabs of 3 new ships this quarter and 5 new ships next quarter, et cetera, over the next several years. They are guaranteeing a pretty constant supply of funding, so long as people are happy with the development of the game and are believing that the game is a viable product. The second part, as far as like, it's taking this long for ships to come, like, if they were to start rushing them and just start cookie cutter and throwing out ships where they're all just sort of one-dimensional, there's nothing unique, there's not whatever, you would hear an outcry of like just everyone being super angry about, oh man, this is so cheap, this is so whatever. So like, what's your complaint? That they're doing too much work to make the ships cool? Like, okay, whatever. So yeah, I just those are my observations.
It's funny you would say that. I just decided to Google this out. In 2019, Board Gamer said that there were 89 ships that were flyable in game. Star Citizen's logbook now says that there are 212 ships, and out of the 212, 149 are flyable. So it's almost 75% of the ships are in game, roughly. So it's not. Go ahead. Were you gonna say?
No. Please.
No. I was just going to say, it is not as bleak as some may think. Sometimes we forget how many there are. I appreciate your point about the aspect of built-in factors of certain amount of ships come out each year that they both know they can produce, as well as that they can put into their pipeline to have done. I think one of the failures, Kai, is that people, for some reason or other, think that the ships are supposed to come out in a certain time frame. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think as consumers, when you buy something, there is automatically an expectation of delivery, right? You buy something, you expect delivery. But I think that when you look at a game like, I was talking with some friends about Eve a little while ago. I played Eve from, I don't remember what time, whatever Star Wars Galaxy stopped, 2003, 2004, and I was playing Eve all the way till like 2012, something like that. And Eve, that whole time I was in it, was not fixed. It was broken. They were constantly upgrading it. They were constantly, and even to this day, they still do DLCs, right? Eve is going on 20 years now of expansion and growth. And they're still adding things. I remember when they added the big stations, right? All types of stuff that they added over time.
The passes.
Nobody ever really said, Eve, when are you going to finish doing blah? I heard people barking about when you're going to fix stuff, but I never heard anybody talk about when are you going to stop putting things in the game. And
no, that's not a bug, that's a feature.
Right, exactly. And I think with Star Citizen, there are people who, and maybe it's because subconsciously Squadron 42 is in the back of our head, and that has a time frame tied to it, like when that's going to release. And I think that people still think of Star Citizen as being this, there's going to be a day when Star Citizen is done, if that makes sense. And I think that, and maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to hear from people in chat. I know we've got some people who are coming right behind you. I've always looked at the persistent universe as it's just going to continue, like 20 years from now. That's what I'm hoping for. So when people say, "Oh, it's going to take 9 years to get all the ships out," well, good. I hope the game's around for freaking 20 years. I'm not saying that I want to wait on a Polaris for 20 years. 10. I'm just saying I hope that they are continuing to produce things that, as you mentioned, keep us as consumers interested and wanting to continue to play and people to spend money and back, and at the same time that the game has longevity. I don't want everything to be in the game, and 3 years from now, we're looking for the next something. I want something that's going to be around for a long time, and that's not going to be every game. Every game's not going to play that way now because the industry is not designed that way. But I do want this game to be played that way. But that's my 2 cents on it for the backlog.
You say 75% of the ships are flyable. That's not that bleak. I honestly feel like it would be the opposite. If 100% of the ships were flyable and there's nothing in the pipeline, that would be bleak.
Yeah, especially without the mechanics and everything to support them, which is the other thing. I mean, not to be funny, they talked about that with like the Idris and stuff. If the tech isn't there to be able to put it in, oh God, we can go into a whole thing about I'll get on a sermon here. I'm not trying to get on a sermon. People don't, some players have no idea the level of work that's going into these ships. You and I have talked about this before. It's not just about a ship that has a cargo bay and a hatch and you can fly. It's about a ship that has a life support system in it that actually works, that has chambers in it where oxygen will be able to be cut off and where bulkhead doors will be able to shut and you'll be able to cut off oxygen, where there will be fire suppression, where there will be all these other elements, fire, if there's fire, all these different things. There's cabling, wires, piping. This stuff works in the game. Paradox, thank you so much for the follow. That is not a ship that you put together in 3 months. It's not, especially when people say, they got 800 people. Yeah, but there's only so many people working on the ships. 700 people aren't making ships. There are people building worlds. There are people doing networking. There's tech. There's all this other stuff that's going on in the background, right? So
it is my. Oh no,
please. No, you go.
it is my strong feeling that if Star Citizen is finished, complete in the next 10 years, it will be a massive failure. I know that doesn't mean released. It can be dropped, it can be released, but it is my absolute strong belief that in order for Star Citizen to be a success, it's going to continue to grow and evolve for a decade or two after it's released. It should not be, if it's finished, oh man, that's a waste of potential.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Talk to you later, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. All right. Let me bring in Pops in Space, and then we're going to bring in ODZ. Montoya, don't start any stuff over there. I saw what you said. Nobody works at CIG. Hey, Pops, how are you?
What's up? You talking to Montoya?
Yeah, you talking about nobody works at CIG. It's crazy. So, yeah. What you think about the ship backlogging?
Well, like you alluded to earlier, there's a reason why, and they've actually told us. It's I mean, they can bring out all the fighters that they want, a couple of months from now, and they can keep dumping those in the game. But the ships like the Endeavor, and they mentioned it on the Polaris, they've meant, the Banu Merchantman, they need the gameplay, because what's going to happen, even we can get maybe I'll say 150 people on a server right now. I know maybe not quite that many, but 150 people on one server and 150 Banu Merchantmen flying around doing nothing is, to me, hey, it's great. I own a Banu Merchantman. I want to get in it. I want to walk around. I want to look at it. I want to touch everything that there is. But 3 weeks after that, it's going to be nothing to do with the shit. You're going to just sit there and polish it and
it'll be a hanger queen. It'll be a hanger queen, right? At that
exactly.
Point, right?
Sweep the hallways out, and so you want gameplay to be with them too, and that to me is going to bring more excitement to people. People are going to start talking about it, even like, I'm going into Pyro. I'm buying ship parts that I'm going to take into Stanton that they can't get there, and I'm going to set up a shop on Microtech by Derelict.
Well, let me say this, Pops. Like, to your point, you were saying earlier about like if these big ships were in right now, and I think CIG has even said this, right? Let's say the Idris is in, right? And I think the Idris is complement of 24 people, and more than likely you'd have a lot of people excited to get on an Idris, right? But if you complement 4 Idrises, maybe 5 Idrises, you have filled the servers right now as far as population, right? And that's what would happen, right? If you'd have 5 Idrises spawn right away, and that would be it. I think there is a synchronicity that has to happen between server population, obviously server meshing and PES and all that stuff, inventory, and then and the game being able to be stable in performance, right? One of the biggest ships we first got in the game a long time ago, Pops, the first big ship we got, believe it or not, was the Starfarer. And when the Starfarer came in, when people would spawn the Starfarer at Port O, you could be at Grimhex and you knew it. You could actually tell when somebody hit the kiosk, you would say somebody spawned a Starfarer, because the whole freaking system would respond to it, right?
Yeah.
Now we're past those days now. We don't really see that level of impact when people spawn ships. But what we will see that will happen, and as you know, until the game mechanic for the Starfarer came in, it was a museum piece. Nobody was using it. A lot of people who really liked it might have, just for the fun of it, decided to use it to move some cargo and freight, but it was a beast to fly. There was no financial real return for it because the cargo bay isn't that big, right? And its sole purpose for getting it was to be able to refuel. So without that much purpose in the game, that ship's been sitting around a long time. The Reclaimer, same thing, right? Exactly. But look at what happened to the Reclaimer once the mechanics were put in. We don't even have all the mechanics for the Reclaimer yet, right? Right. But people have been saying, wow, we get it now. So I understand this feeling about the backlog of ships, but I also understand that, unfortunately, there's an assumption that players are making that these ships should be just churned out and coming all the time, when it's not. CIG has said they're prioritizing ships with Squadron 42. There are some other ships they're able to release in the meantime, particularly smaller ones and stuff. But as the tech is evolving, I think Chu mentioned about that, the innovation aspect of doing this as well. There's a lot still that we're just gonna have to wait on. It's just not gonna be.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead and throw it out, and I'm gonna bring the next person in. Go ahead.
Okay. My question to you is, since you mentioned the reclaimer, and to bring up the point, how many years ago did you have the reclaimer and the Starfarer, and we are just now getting the gameplay for them?
Yeah, Starfarer was first, I think, and then the reclaimer came after it, maybe within a year or so. But they've been around for about 5-6 years, maybe. They've been around a long time.
Yeah, so you see how the distance and time for gameplay.
Yeah, long time for those. Yeah, absolutely. And some other ships have been faster, right? Like, Prospector and stuff, the mining stuff, boom, 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 But again, my point is those other ships, those legacy ships that have been around for a long time. Polaris was 2016, I think, 2017. We're 6 years into that one. The Nautilus came out 2018, I think. So we're 4 years into that one. So, I mean, there's some other large scale ships. So we won't even get into the Idris and the Javelins that are around from the early days,
Oh, yeah.
But again, we're not there to accommodate them yet. And the systems don't accommodate them either. So, all right, let me bring some other folks in, man. Thank you, Pops. Appreciate you. All right. Odie, let's bring in Odie Z again. Odie, you there?
Hey, what's up, Griff?
Yeah, bro, what you got?
Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, when people are like complaining about not having their particular ship, I can't really feel any sympathy for them, because the ships were not promised to you at a specific point during development. They were promised to you at release. Right? So even if your ship comes out the day before release, it still counts.
They're still within their legal confines.
I don't know where people get off thinking that just because I pledged for a ship a decade ago, that means I should get my ship now.
I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the fact that I'm the guy who bought a, what's the ship called? Oh shoot, I can't even think of the name of it. What's the bird people, the Tavaran one? The fighters.
What is it?
What's the Tavaran ship? The Strike. Those. Okay. Well, guess what? That came out. It announced it within 2 years. That sucker was in the game. The Talon. Thank you, Red. And I paid for my Banu Merchantman back in 2014. And how come I haven't gotten it? Because they just came out with this ship. That's where it comes from. They're watching other ships that get announced later come out sooner than ships that were announced earlier coming out later.
So you know what you tell them? You tell them, okay, look, who told you to pledge for that big ship? Okay, if you wanted it earlier, you pledge for a small ship. Okay, big ship, it takes more time. And why would you even want it coming out earlier? We don't have all the systems in.
Because I paid for it. Because I paid for it.
We're not even going to be able to build it. Okay, because a lot of the systems that they require to build large ships doesn't exist yet. They're literally just getting to the hull C, its mechanic system. Yeah. Because remember, with the hull A, you don't have to go through the the transforming section of it, right? It just does it on the outside. With the hull C, you can literally traverse from one end of the ship to the other through that section. So it needs to account for things like, power. A big one is going to be, what did you call it? Life support.
Yeah,
has to be in there.
All these new features,
like gravity, the different physics grids. So much needs to go into that. I don't know why you want a complicated ship out sooner. When getting it later means you get more gameplay. You're trying to,
Odie, you're trying to find the rational reason, and I made it very clear to you. Just because they want it, it has nothing to do with any of that. Trust me, they just want it.
You know what? If they really wanted that bad, they need to cozy up. Maybe blow up like the screenshot, the JPEG. Hug it a little closer, because that's as close as you're gonna get in some systems already. So, I mean, if you want a smaller ship, pledge for something small. I mean, if you want a ship quicker, pledge for something smaller.
So smaller, okay.
Yeah, I can't help you with that. I'm sorry.
Okay, Odie, thank you, man. That's pretty good. Let me bring in Red. Red hasn't been in here yet. Red, how are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. You're waiting on your javelin still, right?
Absolutely. I'm just waiting for people to send me a javelin, and then I'll get it.
Okay.
Or just well, if I can get now my ship, I'll buy a 3D printer and make one myself.
Make it yourself.
You know?
Okay, fair enough.
There you go. But our other friend, Odyssey, already said like the systems that they still have to develop for the ships, and they are not in. Like life support, the drones, and all the other things. And a bigger ship, if you have to do another rework because the systems are getting in, they have to redo that ship again.
Yeah.
So that takes more time. You see that, for example, our Carrack, the scanning has to get in, the drones has to get in, the repairing has to get in, all those swappable, what's that thing?
Cargo containers on the bottom. Yes, swappable containers. Yes, a lot. And you're right. The Carrack actually does nothing in fulfilling its role right now.
No.
I'm talking about the exploration side of it. I'm just saying, like you said, cartography's not working. The drones aren't working. The med bay, there's nothing really. That big old ship, most of it's not working the way it's supposed to yet.
Yeah, exactly. So the bigger the ship, the more time has to go into it again to redo it again. So, of course, I want to see my Bounty Merchantman as well, but I guess I'll buy a 3D print instead and see it then for myself. You know, it's physical.
It's funny that you said that, because I just thought about. I'm just saying this on the 890 because the 890 is kind of one of those ships that's fleshed out with a lot of the different mechanics. The 890 and the 400 does too. The 800 has a gravity well to it. So does the Reclaimer, right? So gravity hasn't been implemented yet. It has the life support system built into it. That hasn't been put in. It has scanning. It has actually scanning areas in it that they haven't been. They're just empty slots right now, right? There's a batteries area. I mean, these are areas that we haven't gotten into dealing with yet, right? Let alone the other components that are physicalized, like shields and quantum drives and all the other stuff. So most of the ships aren't really operating at their full, you know what I mean, capacity even now.
For example, the MSR, it has like all those computers.
All the computers,
the scanning.
The data running, none of that.
Still,
that's right.
And they have to go back to that ship as well.
That's right. That's a good point. Good point, Red. I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, friend.
Yes.
All righty, good stuff. All right, last but not least, we're gonna bring in Fist to Face. Fist, you there?
How are you? Okay.
Yeah, what you got?
Kind of said something, touched on something with ODZ, and I wanted to say, you remember back in the day when grandmother or your mother, you woke up in the morning and came downstairs and you thought you were going to get pancakes for breakfast, and she gave you a bowl of grits. And she just said, hey, this is what you got. You can either eat it or what.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
And to the point of what I'm trying to make is this. Have we become spoiled? Because when I listen to this question, right? Right?
Thanks for the follow.
You want this ship to come out. Now, here's a scenario. When the C2 came out, right? The C2 kind of had, some graphical glitches, some bugs and stuff like that. I believe they said it wasn't quite ready yet, right? So, and like Pop said earlier, the reason why their response was to say, we don't want to put out a ship, like that's so big without any gameplay behind it and mechanics. And I think in a lot of ways that when we look at the point of fact, when somebody tells us, hey, listen, you're going to have to wait. We throw that hissy fit, because when you look at the way games are today, it's that instant gratification. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I would play devil's advocate a little bit, okay? Bear with me here, okay? I paid for this Idris in 2014. It is 8 years later. They have put out 150 other ships.
You're right.
And I'm still waiting on my Idris. Is 8 years too long to ask?
Okay.
For my ship. Now, mind you, I'm just saying, I'm being facetious. That's the argument that they have. Okay. Now, but I want to go to the point of this particular poster. This poster is talking about a backlog in the sense of in the future. Because they said they understand when it's because of game mechanics. You know, if game features and mechanics ain't there, we get that. But their concern is that is CIG setting themselves up for never really getting this stuff done because they keep coming up with new concepts. They've already got ships they're backlogged on, and they've already said that it's going to take years to do this. That's where they're really going with this thing, right? Is do we have to wait 9 years? Is that going to be cool for the game to have to wait that long for ships? 7 years, 5 years, the ships to be out.
I see your point, but I still again kind of look at it from a point of view that, okay, if the Javelin dropped within a few months from, or let's say Javelin, if the Idris dropped a few months from now, right? And it's nothing to really do in it, what's going to happen? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll become a museum piece, right? I mean, people will fly it and see. I don't know. Again, remember I was saying earlier about synchronicity. I think there's a lot of reasons why for ships. Like, first of all, you've got to have a system with performance that can handle them. You got to have the amount of people that can accommodate the ships, right, to be able to actually fly them. You have to have enough capacity so that other gamers can be in the game while those certain ships are in the game. Those big ships are in the game. There's also gameplay, right, that needs to exist for the games themselves, whether it's economics or whatever it is needs to be done. If there's certain mechanics that are needed, not to be funny, but like the Banu Merchantman, for example, and everybody keeps talking about that ship. It's got a huge cargo area in it, right? And what does it mean to be able to utilize that area? Or am I just going to put, an eighth of the cargo hold is filled, right? Because I can't even get enough stuff for it, right? I mean, some people have even talked about like the whole E. If you had a whole E right now, what could you do with it? I mean, nothing. There's nothing in the game that would allow you to put 200 and some, however many hundreds of thousands of SCU on that thing, right?
But right. And see, here's the thing though, like, okay, so if the Banu Merchantman comes out, we don't even have the Banu in the game.
You don't need the Banu, do you?
No, but think about it. I mean, you don't exactly need the Banu in there, but I mean, you think about it though. The Banu Merchantman, from what I'm understanding, from what I've heard from sitting around with you guys and talking about, the Banu Merchantman allows you to go into certain places.
Yeah, I understand that, but let me pull you back on that a little bit.
Okay.
My problem with having the Banu Merchantman in the game is what we saw when we saw Jax at CitizenCon. That ship is a monstrosity. Where would you put it? Where would it go? Exactly. What would you do with it? I mean, I'm not being funny. I mean, I know people who want it. And I'm not saying in the sense of flying it. I'm just saying, like Pop said earlier, once you sweep the floors and wax it a couple times, no people were like that with the 890. When the 890 came out, once they saw what the fuel consumption was on that sucker, it sat in the hangar.
Right, exactly.
People weren't flying that thing.
With the Kraken privateer.
People weren't flying it. They were like, "Oh no, man! I just to fly this sucker out of atmosphere is breaking me. I put 40. If I want to call it up on the freaking kiosk, I got to pay 40,000 just to be able to retrieve the thing if it gets damaged, and that's on expedited. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there are reasons why those ships, even when we have big ships in the game now, a lot of people don't play them. Is all I'm saying. There's nothing there to justify bringing those ships out.
And that's to the point that like I've heard everybody before me and what I'm saying as well.
Okay.
It's, you can't have that cake and then eat it too.
Okay.
So it's unfortunate that's the way it is because, like you said, if those mechanics or things aren't there, then what's going to happen?
It's going to be difficult. Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right, my brother. Thank you very much, as always. Okay. Thank you guys for that one. Don't forget, you guys can come in and join us for the chat if you would like to have something to say. We would love to hear from you, or at least I would love to hear from you. I'm going to put the link in one more time before we do this last topic, and Whoops, that was the wrong thing. I hit inspect instead of paste. There's the link if anybody wants to come in and share. And this very last one. Now, this is a post that came up from Xylo. And I know that many of you have been keeping up with this conversation about theaters of war. And so people are saying, because of some stuff that came up on ISC, as theaters of war is not being done, it's thrown out, they're not using it. And Xylo posted this just the other day. I just gave you guys the link. This is a clip of it. This is from a couple days ago. And this is Xylo responding to Kennebel? I don't know how you pronounce that. He says TOE is technically inactive development, not inactive development, as indicated directly on the progress tracker on the public roadmap. To get ahead of the inevitable next question, no, it's not canceled. In fact, we're actually hired 3 of the incredibly talented TOE developers from Firesprite and look forward to sharing more updates with you when the time is right. It's equally important to highlight that TOE, Theaters of War, has already positively impacted the PU and the future of the Arena Commander. For instance, Siege of Orison wouldn't have been possible without the work completed for TOE. The team is still passionate as ever and looks forward to sharing updates on TOW and other experimental game modes when they are ready to do so. Okay, so I want to talk about that just a little bit, because Theaters of War, as we mentioned just a few shows back, a few years back at one of the Citizen Cons, they actually had computers set up. CIG had them set up at Citizen Con, and many backers got a chance to try out Theaters of War. Of course, we know Evocati was testing it at one given point. When Firesprite came on board with CIG, they were starting the development and working with it. Sean Tracy, I think at the time, was over it. And many of you guys know that Firesprite got bought out by Microsoft. Don't know what happened in that interim of whether or not they were continuing to work on it or whether the thing was put on hold with that buyout. But then CIG ended up hiring some of the engineers from Firesprite to come over and work at CIG. And as Xylo said, they've begun working on it again. So let me bring in Kai Zen, then I'm going to bring in Red, then I'm going to bring in Odie on this one. And let's talk about Theaters of War. Hey, buddy.
Just one little clarification. Firesprite was bought by Sony.
Oh, Sony. But,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Wrong big company. My mistake.
No problem. But,
thank you for the correction.
Still effectively means the same thing. So my observation on this, and I like this post. I love Xylo. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the maybe agitation or exasperation or whatever about some of the things with regard to CIG development comes from people not understanding what is being discussed or talked about. And this is just my opinion. I'm not saying I have factual proof of this, but you know, we have Arena Commander. It's like we have a plethora of products that's part of the CIG development. Mm-hmm. We've got Squadron 42, which is the single-player base game that's supposed to lead into Star Citizen. We've got Star Citizen, which is the MMO. We've got Arena Commander, which is designed and thought to be sort of like a test bed / for like Elite Dangerous commanders, you know, an arena mode or something similar to what they have there, or in lots of other games you have an arena mode or horde mode or whatever, where it's just a play around mode. I believe, and I don't think that we have actual proof of this, but it is my extremely strong suspicion that what Theater of War actually is meant to be, or was meant to be, or conceptualized internally was sort of an offshoot of Arena Commander. Like there's also Star Marine, like it gets fuzzy, right. But I think that Theaters of War was conceptualized as an offshoot version of Arena Commander that would potentially be console friendly. I'm thinking like, because I don't think that Chris has any interest in making or developing Star Citizen or Squadron 42, maybe not, who knows, as console friendly products. but I think maybe Theater of War would be a slightly dumbed down, slightly simplified, let's say, package that you could use, that you could A, put out on consoles and generate a ton of revenue, and B, use as a way to maybe you put it out there like catnip. Hey, the first, and people, and then they're like, oh, I love this game. And they're like, well, hey man, you got a PC too. Why don't you buy this other product over here that you can do all of these other things? So if that's the case, I can completely see CIG at this moment deprioritizing the console port sort of version of this product and saying, hey man, we really are all hands on deck on Squadron 42, and we also at the same time have a ton of people that are crying out for work to be done on Star Citizen, while, for let's be honest, most of our people are, to a large extent, prioritizing Squadron 42. So like this other thing, the console port, sure, it's not that it's shelved, it's not that it's like removed, it's not that it's not going to happen, it's just not our priority right now. We got to get this other thing done, and once we get the other stuff done, the console port friendly version of Arena Commander will be super easy to do and maybe make more fiscal sense at that point.
Yeah.
You don't want to put out, that would be like if you put out that product with the idea of capturing the console market, capturing money and moving them over. If you put it out too early, that would be like putting out your big hype reel for your blockbuster summer movie 2 to 3 years before it comes out. By the time it comes out, everybody's meh, they're over it. So like, of course you're going to focus things in the right time frame, I think. Right. Just my thought.
No, I think that's a great thought. I remember when theaters came out. For those of you who don't remember, I know Zombie Pig, you were asking about it. Theaters of War was basically a mission-based gameplay. I forget how many people were on each side, like a 24, 48, something like that. But you had these different missions. They were ground-based, there was air-based, and then there was a satellite or a space station-based dynamic that you do. I think it was in 3 parts, if I'm remembering correctly. So you had to use ground vehicles and ships and all types of stuff to ultimately go up to this station. Kai, I know this has come up before. They said so much of it was it was reminiscent of a console, that you could easily see how something like that could be ported to console. I never thought about it from the sense of that it would be great marketing for drawing people into Star Citizen, which would be cool. Now, mind you, this is what we're just saying with possibilities, guys. We're not saying CIG was saying this. What I will say this, and I'm going to move on, Kai, thank you for what you said, was something that he said here, Kai, at the very end. He said they're still passionate as ever and look forward to sharing updates on TOE. Look at what he calls it, an experimental game mode. That's something I never heard them use as a term. And Zylo's very specific when he says things, very specific to the community. And so to have the idea of, and them saying that other things were birthed from this, right? Siege of Orison was birthed from what they learned from this. Obviously, Arena Commander birthed these ideas as well. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, some people may remember this, back in the day in our hangars, we used to have a pod that you would get into to play Arena Commander. You didn't do it from a menu section. You did it from in your hangar. Right now, when you go down to the Frontline store, whatever the store is down in New Babbage, the one that's the Apple store. When you guys go down to the basement, there are pods there. That's what those pods are there for. You're supposed to be able to buy those, install them in your hab or your ship, and be able to do virtual things like Arena Commander and other stuff. Chris wants us to do everything in game, not from the menus like how it is now. Like you said, Kai, not to click on Star Marine or Arena Commander. No, the idea is that we will be able to be in game and be able to utilize all this stuff from in game. So we're seeing early tier stuff. But again, like the show tomorrow, now and later, that's what this is all supposed to be about. What's going to happen later. So thank you, Kai.
And if you read between the lines, I think it's very clear. Satterball confirmed. I'm out.
Thanks, Kai. All right, let me bring in ODZ, and then we're going to close out with Red. Odie, you there?
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, what you got, buddy?
You got me in mid-argument. I was arguing with Red.
Okay. What you got?
Okay, so I literally was just having a an argument on Reddit. This exact post.
Oh, okay.
And this is the problem that people have with this. I think people are under the mistaken impression that when Sean said that, hey, it's, in a couple of months we're going to go to testing, and then based on that testing, we'll push it out to the P or to the PU, right? But remember what he said. He said based on feedback from Evo.
Right.
We'll figure out what we're going to do next. And it's like people forget it somehow. And like I read this one quote in there that said that whenever Sean opens his mouth, just believe it's going to be a lie. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, wait, so he gave you caveats for when, it would be released. He told you the reasons why it would be released, if it is all based on feedback. They did 3 tests, they got feedback, and they realized it's not yet ready. I don't know why people are complaining about this. Do they want them to just release broken stuff?
I think this is the negative. I don't want to make excuses. I just want to say that I'm just going to say what I think it is. I think there is a subconscious desire in gamers, because we've been trained for the next best thing. What's going to be the next thing coming? And I think that when we see something that hits that neurological thing in our brain that excites us, the caveats disappear. Everything goes away other than the fact that it's coming. That's all we hear at that point. We don't hear anything else. And so we want it so badly because we see it. There's also the side of it that we see, like, remember with Theaters of War, we actually saw footage of it. It wasn't like, pipe dream. We saw it.
Right.
People were playing it. We were even hearing stories about it. Thank you, dopamine. Thank you, Debris. And I think that once that stuff gets triggered, to your point, and I think you always come from a very, what's the word? You're aware of all the caveats and accept them. I think there are a lot of gamers that's it's just like when we buy a ship and you have to read the small print at the end. They don't care about that. They just click the button because they want their ship. They don't care about it. This is no guarantee that your ship is going to look like this when you get it. They don't even see that. They don't. They just see the ship. They see the trailer, and that's what they want. And
but then that's the thing, though. They're not being accountable to their own.
I agree.
Listen,
that's their responsibility.
If you want to blame CIG for not releasing it, okay, you can be mad at that. But they told you, the reasons why it wouldn't be released. Right. You need to manage your own expectations.
There you go. Which is what Disco says all the time, right?
And that's the problem that we keep running into, like with all these questions. It's people are letting their imaginations run wild, and then when they're coming face to face with the reality of the development of this game, they get let down by their overinflated expectations. I'm like, look, do I want Theaters of War? Of course I do. I want more content to play, right? But if Theaters of War would have come out now, look at what happened with Star Marine, right? Everyone was expecting Star Marine. Oh, why isn't it out yet? They released it, right, in a better state than what they had with Ilphonic, and it still didn't keep the player base. So now you want them to release Theaters of War when they haven't even fixed all the problems with Star Marine and Arena Commander. It's like people want. They say, oh yeah, okay, give us, whatever it is in whatever broken form. You say that until you get it. And then once you get it, and then you're like, why is this broken? Bruh, you just told us to release it broken. Okay, you don't get the right to complain now that it's broken. Okay. They've learned their lesson. They want to fix it. They want to get it right. And, I was telling people that, look, if they can get their FPS right, it'll pull in the most people right now before the MMO portion of the game is done. Right. Because it's very quick, right? It's very approachable if they can get like their front end, right? You can just go in, click on a couple buttons, you're in the game. And that'll bring in a lot of people from FPS because it's one of the biggest genres right now. Right. Absolutely. If they can do it right, and I think that's probably why they're a bit more hesitant now with Theaters of War to release it. I mean, they did try, right? But they realized, look, we have a lot of work to do. Bad performance issues, right? And then the flow isn't great too. And then another thing is, I think they need to do things like they need to add loadouts where they can restrict certain weapons from particular. If you're an assaulter, maybe you only get a certain type of armor you can choose from, certain weapons you can choose from, certain gadgets. And then what are we going to do now? We have healing. We didn't have healing back in 2019 when they showcased Theaters of War, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we have healing.
Yeah.
How is the healing going to be incorporated?
Yeah.
Is it going to be something everyone has access to, or are you going to have a medic archetype there as well?
You just said something that really resonated with me, and it's the fact that whatever CIG puts out in the area of FPS cannot be mediocre or average. It has to be exceptional. And what I mean by that is, I'm looking at all the stuff that's out right now from people who are the hardcore players of something like Arma to the people who are the entertaining players of playing something like, Call of Duty. But then you've got the people who are right in the middle, like the folks that are like into Tarkov, right?
Right.
Realistic enough, but not so much that you want to go out and jump out a window. And to me, that's kind of like the bar that CIG's got to go for, because there are so many shooters. There's so much FPS stuff out there. And the question is, what do you do that's going to arrest that audience enough to make them see Star Citizen as being distinctively different and not just another copy of what's out there already, which is going to take a lot of work. It really is. Not to mention all the mechanics and, like I said, the intricacies of what's constantly being added to the Star Citizen universe and making sure that propagates into something like Theaters of War. So it will be interesting to see, what they come up with in the end.
Right. And I think that with Theaters of War, it's a really great template for what they can actually do for that particular genre, for the FPS genre. Because if you think about it, right, not only do you have ground combat, you have vehicle combat, right? You have
air combat,
anti-air,
air combat,
right?
anti-air,
you have anti-infantry, you have spaceships, right? And then one thing I would love for them to make integral is EVA FPS.
No, don't even get into it. Don't even get into it. I know.
Because if they can nail that, right? Think about it. And now we have tractor beams, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you're about to get blown up. Okay, well, you're not going to get blown up now, because now we also have soft death, right, with 318.
Yeah.
Okay, so now there's soft death. Now you're going to disembark. Okay, you can tractor beam yourself onto the space station, because maybe you got to plant the bomb, right? So, I mean, there's so many ways that they can actually do this, and then they're going to have to balance it, because maybe they might need to restrict, tractor beams if it makes it too easy for you to just track. I mean, the range of tractor beam is long as hell, right? So there's so many considerations that they have to make now. And then again, they also want to put in other gadgets and stuff and now in 318, supposedly NPCs will also have grenades. So that'll be interesting.
There's so much, to your point, Odie, there's so much that's been introduced already since Theaters of War. That wasn't even in Theaters of War that we have in our hands now. So there's a lot that this thing could blow up to in the long run when it's all said and done. Let me get the last one in. Thank you, man. You and Red Bear, y'all can finish our argument later. I'm gonna bring him in, okay? All right, let me get Red in, and we're gonna wrap it up for today. Red, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
There he is. Okay, what you got, buddy?
Argument with Ollie.
Yeah, you guys are having a good debate there. Okay.
I like it. Well, I'm partly agreeing with him with Theaters of War. I actually played it in Manchester.
Oh, you did?
Just first released. Not only the pictures I saw and the videos, I actually had hands-on. The first impressions of that from Manchester, I could say it's average their best. I told him that as well, but not ready for release. So in a way, I'm with him. I'm glad that they didn't release it. I mean, else people would play it maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and they'll say, okay, it's another ripoff of Battlefield, right? Because most people have Battlefield and will play Battlefield instead of this Theaters of War.
Right.
So in a way, it has to be better, at least than Battlefields, to attract people to buy Star Citizen. If it's single player or the persistent universe.
Okay.
My feelings are a bit. They release it as an to balance the weapons, the ground weapons for Star Citizen, and I thought it was a bit not realistic, because the environment in the PU reacts differently. You can put in different weapons towards the ground combat than on a confined surface as in Theaters of War. In the PU, you can put in the A2, for example, ask a morphologist. And in theaters of war, they can designate the amount or the different amount of ships. Like when I was in Manchester, they said like, yeah, well, you can have the, what was it? The Hornets and the Sabres.
Okay.
Yeah, the Sabre was like on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't go there. I see that. I don't know why, but okay. But yeah, you should be able then to open all up, right?
Yeah.
To have like 100% to balance all kind of weapons in there. Then you should be able to implement everything and not just some of the weapons.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: did you see potential in it when you played it? Did you see like where CIG could go, or did you feel like it was just mediocre, that it wasn't completely where it needed to be to keep players playing it?
The last one.
Okay.
Because it was just it was not bad. I'm being very honest. It was not bad, but I don't think people would put in the $45 if they have Battlefield.
Oh, okay.
Unless maybe Level Cap says like, it's awesome, and he just he thinks it's the best since sliced bread. Then maybe some people will pick it up. Yeah, sure. But I think his audience already got Star Citizen as far as I can see.
Wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's how I see it anyway.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks for giving me the response on it. I knew people who played it, who talked about it. I never got to play it, but I heard good things about it. The biggest thing I heard was performance was the issue for a lot of people. But I was excited about it. I was definitely excited about where it would go. But you guys have given me some serious things to think about, especially the idea of how much has changed since it was introduced to where we are now. And obviously there's way more that's been introduced into the universe as far as mechanics and stuff that, hopefully I'm just glad Xylo, hopefully he put this whole thing to rest, because people were just really going on about this whole thing with Theaters of War.
Yeah, but I think also that people just want to say something about, like SATA Ball, and we had another game mode that didn't came out. And people are very sour about that. So Theaters of War is the next one. They can point out every time when something goes wrong with Star Citizen, right? I mean,
true.
And I don't think Theaters of War is the most important thing in Star Citizen at the moment. Let's focus on the PU and Squadron 42, and hopefully we can have some fun there.
Okay. Good point. Yeah. And a good point to close on. Thanks, Red.
Yes.
Alrighty. All right, gang. You guys have hit it all today. Thank you guys so much for those of you who dropped in. Truly appreciate you. Thank you for all those who followed and subbed today. Thank you guys so much for that. Definitely want to tell you that tomorrow, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing our show called Now and Later, talking about things that are in the game now, things that we're familiar with, or maybe some things from the past, but mostly stuff that you're familiar with, and then things that are coming later. Maybe, for example, buyback hanger. How does it work now? How will it work later? CIG making money, selling ships. How does it work now? How will it work later? We're going to be talking about that. Flight suits. How do they work now? How will they work later? Medical, we're going to be talking about all these different things. How do things work now? That tier 0, tier 1, and then what CIG has told us about later on. There's a lot of changes. The game's going to be very different later on. So we want to talk about that on our show tomorrow. So hopefully you guys will join us for that one. Also, as you guys know, today is PodSat Saturday. This is our day where we refer you to our comrades in arms in Star Citizen. When you leave from here, we want you to be able to make sure that you tune in and watch the Astropub, Paul Shelley. He's not on right now, but he comes on at 6 p.m. Eastern time with the Captain's Table. So hopefully you guys will be able to tune in with him. And then after that at 9 p.m. Eastern time, we want you to watch Relay. Tune in for the old school OGs of Star Citizen. Eris and Nakara and all the wonderful people who are over there. Shiver, make sure you guys can visit them. Whole Saturday evening and afternoon of nothing but Star Citizen content and conversation. So hopefully you guys will be able to join us for that. Thank you guys, as always, for being here. Thank you guys again for the follows and subs. Don't forget to follow us on our social media. And hopefully we'll see you guys on tomorrow for our Now and Later show. And for today, we are going to send you guys over, since Paul's not on, I'm going to send you guys over to Subliminal with Subliminal TV. You guys know Subliminal. He is a knowledgeable brother who definitely does these great breakdowns on ships and weapons and all that good stuff. And I think right now he's reviewing the SCL from yesterday. So if you haven't watched that, it might be a good time to check him out. When you get over there, let Subliminal know you came from Soul Citizens. If you like what you see, follow, send them some love, and hopefully we'll see you guys on tomorrow's show. And until then, we want to say peace, love, and soul. You guys take care of yourselves. Stay safe. We'll see you soon. Ciao.
Just they have a bunch of salvage and they sell